Welcome back to Train Signal. You are watching the video for Lab 5, upgrading the domain and forest functional levels and changing single master operation roles in benandbrady.com. Wow, this is not a title, this is a paragraph. And you're right, we'll be discussing a lot of topics in this particular video. In fact, I've divided this video into two parts. In the first part of the video, I will talk about the domain and the forest functional levels. And in the second part of the video, I'm going to talk about the single master operation roles in our domain. So let's get started with the first part, which is the domain and forest functional levels in benandbrady.com. In this part of the video, we will talk about the different domain and forest functional levels, and then I will show you how to upgrade the existing domain and forest functional levels to take the most advantage of Server 2003. So to begin with, let's revisit the definitions of what is a domain, what is a tree, and what is a forest. I have this little diagram that will assist us in defining these structures one more time. So let's begin with what a domain is. Here's a domain, benandbrady.com. A domain is simply a collection of or a group of users, groups, and computers that share common security policies. A domain is nothing but a security triangle. All the objects in the domain follow similar policies. Now, you can have a child domain. For example, usa.benandbrady.com in this particular figure is a child domain. The reason it is a child domain is because it shares its parents, it shares the parent domain, benandbrady.com. So the parent domain is benandbrady.com, the child domain is actually USA, and the full name for this child domain is usa.benandbrady.com. You can have a second child domain. In this example, it is asia.benandbrady.com. So what has happened is this particular structure has a parent domain and two child domains, and this structure, that is a collection of parent and child domains, is referred to as a tree. So here's your first domain, here are the child domains, and this is a tree. So as the company grows, Active Directory is completely scalable. It grows along with the company. So you may start off with the first domain like we did over here, and once benandbrady.com becomes a huge company, then what you can do is divide that company into two, for example, two different units, USA and Asia. And one of the reasons why you create child domains is because you need separate security policies in benandbrady.com, you need a separate security policy in the child domain USA, and different set of security policies in Asia. In other words, if you need separate security policies, you must create separate domains. If you want similar policies, you do not have to create these child domains. In fact, you can go to benandbrady.com and create two OUs, USA and Asia, and then have the appropriate objects in those OUs. But doing it in that manner, all the objects in USA, Asia, and benandbrady.com will have to follow the same policy, that of benandbrady.com. So the rule of the thumb is, if you need separate security policies, create separate child domains. If the only reason why you want to create separate domains is for the reasons of organization, you do not have to do that unless you have a great reason to do so. What you can do is, in benandbrady.com, you can create two OUs, USA and Asia, and then put the appropriate objects in those OUs. So once again, a domain is a security boundary. You create the first domain, and then you create child domains, and this collection of parent and child domains is referred to as a tree. Now, let's say that benandbrady.com goes ahead and acquires a different company called jackandjill.com. Now, jackandjill.com had their own organizational structure and had their own parent and child domain set up over here, just like it is in this figure. So jackandjill.com is the parent domain, and then they had two child domains, Euro for Europe and Canada. Now, you do not have to create two separate Active Directory structures. All these 6 domains can coexist together. What you do is you create an additional tree in the same forest for benandbrady.com. So to summarize, this particular figure has 6 domains, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It has 2 trees. This is the first tree, and this is the second tree. And the entire collection over here is referred to as, I was holding it at the bottom over here, is referred to as the forest. So in other words, a forest is nothing but a collection of domains, and these domains can be in parent-child relationships, or they can be single domains. A forest is simply a collection of domains. The Active Directory is shared by all the domain controllers of that forest. One of the biggest design goals of Active Directory is that it should be scalable. In other words, as the company grows, your Active Directory structure should be able to grow with you. You do not have to recreate the entire domain structure. just because your company has grown or has acquired a different company. All of them can coexist together. Now, this also comes at a price. In other words, let's say that the company that you acquired over here had Windows 2000 and Windows NT domains, or in Asia, you still have some Windows 2000 servers and Windows NT servers running as domain controllers. Well, the price over here is the following. When Microsoft designed Windows Server 2003, they tried to make it as much as possible backward compatible with Windows 2000 domains and Windows NT domains. However, Windows Server 2003 has certain new features that cannot be made compatible with Windows NT and Windows 2000. It is for this reason that they had to create what is known as domain and forest functional levels. The whole idea behind domain and forest functional levels is the following. If you have all the domain controllers in your domain running Server 2003, you don't have an issue. You simply raise it to the highest level that Server 2003 can support, and all the features that are available in Server 2003 will be available. However, if your domain is working, in other words over here, some of the domain controllers over here are running Windows NT or Windows Server 2000, then well, in that case, for the sake of backward compatibility, there are some features in Server 2003 that will be disabled until you actually upgrade those domain controllers from Windows NT or Windows 2000 to Server 2003. So now what we're going to do is look at what these different roles are and how can we change the role from one to the other. So going on to the next slide over here, the domain functional level is simply a way to provide a way to enable domain-wide Active Directory features within the network environment. In other words, there are certain domain functional levels, and depending on what domain controllers are in your domain, you can work at one of the following levels. In fact, there are 4 domain functional levels. The first one is referred to as the Windows 2000 mixed domain level. This is the default level. In other words, when you install Server 2003 for the very first time, by default, the domain functional level that is set is Windows 2000 mixed. What this means is that this particular domain level can support all different types of Windows NT domain controllers, namely Windows NT, Windows 2000, and Windows Server 2003. So if you have any of these domain controllers and by default the domain level is mixed, you're all set. You do not have to worry about other domain controllers not being able to participate in replication and in other kinds of activities with the Windows Server 2003. So once again, the first level is Windows 2000 mixed, and it is there by default. Now, what are some of the other domain functional levels? Let's go on to the next one, which is what is referred to as the Windows 2000 native. Now, those of you who've done have studied Windows 2000 may be familiar with these two modes. The first one was mixed and the second one was native. In fact, in Windows 2000, these were the only 2 different domain functional levels. Now there are actually 4. The Windows 2000 native mode basically means that you have upgraded your Windows NT domain controllers to Windows 2000. In other words, in this particular mode, the only servers that are capable of running domain controllers are Windows 2000 and Windows Server 2003. So by default it is mixed mode. If you would like to upgrade to the native mode, you have to make sure that all the domain controllers in your network are running Windows 2000 Server or Windows Server 2003. Once again, if you have Windows NT Server running, you cannot upgrade to native mode. Now what happens between mixed mode and native mode? Well, there are more features that are available in the native mode than there were in the mixed mode. Okay, so it gets better and better. Active Directory came out with Server 2000. So there are newer features in Server 2000 that NT did not support, and it could not be made backward compatible. So once you go from 2000 mixed to 2000 native, more features become available. And I'm going to give you some examples of these features as we go along in the video when I do the practical demonstrations. So going on to the third mode. The third mode is what is known as the Windows Server 2003 interim mode. Now this is new to those of you who have done or studied Windows Server 2000. The reason they have this mode is because it is possible to upgrade or to install Windows Server 2003 in a network that has Windows NT 4 only. So in other words, Windows Server 2003 interim mode is only available in those networks that have Windows NT. If you have Windows Server 2000 running, you do not have the option of actually upgrading to Windows Server 2003 interim mode. It is there so that if you have Windows NT, when you first install or when you first upgrade a domain controller running Windows NT 4 to Windows Server 2003, the mode will be interim mode. The idea is that you can finish installing, and then after you're done installing Server 2003 and also upgraded all the other remaining domain controllers that are running Windows NT, you should go ahead and upgrade to a higher role. Again, the key feature over here is that this particular mode does not support Windows 2000. So let's go back once again to summarize this. I've done 3 modes so far, and I'll talk about the 4th mode soon. The reason it is important to summarize is because it is not as confusing as it really sounds. Sometimes when you answer the questions in the Microsoft certification exams, they just try to ask about it in a roundabout manner. It is very simple. Here's how you understand, and here's how you memorize what role is suitable where. If you have all 3 kinds of domain controllers, Windows Server 2003, Windows Server 2000, and NT4, you have to be in a mixed mode. If you have just Windows 2000 and Windows 2003, you must be, or you can be, in the native mode. If you have Server 2003 and Windows NT only, you can be in the Server 2003 interim mode. This particular mode, you cannot have a server running Windows 2000. And last but not the least, if you have all the servers running Windows Server 2003, the highest mode is what is known as the Windows Server 2003 mode. Over here, once again, all the domain controllers must be running Server 2003. Once you've upgraded to this particular domain functional level, you are taking full advantage of all the Active Directory features that are present in Server 2003. And upgrading the domain functional level is a very easy step. All you have to do is use a tool known as the Active Directory Domains and Trust, and over there you can upgrade the domain functional level to the appropriate level for your domain. So let's do that. I'm going to minimize this, and now I'm back at the recording station. So let's make a connection to domain controller 1. I have this connection running right over here. We will have to log back in to the domain controller. So currently I am in DC1. Now, before I actually perform the upgrade, let's verify a few things. There are a couple of things that you should be aware of. Like I said, there are certain features that are not available in the lower mode than it is in the higher mode. So what I'm going to do is take you first to Active Directory Users and Computers. Very good. Then over here, what we're going to do is click on benandbrady.com, and then let's right-click on benandbrady.com, select Properties, and then over here, look at this portion over here that says under the General tab, Domain Functional Level, Windows 2000 Mix. So by default, that is the mode that is selected by default. For its functional level, we'll talk about it later on. So currently we're talking about the domain functional level, and it is in Windows 2000 Mixed. Now in this particular mode, if you remember, you can support all 3, Windows NT, Windows 2000, and Windows Server 2003. Well, for backward compatibility, there is a price to pay, and here are a couple of things that you cannot do. So for example, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with this being an advanced course in Active Directory, there is something known as a universal group. So let's right click on the users container over here, and I'm going to click on new and try to create a new global group. So I'm going to click on global over here, and as you can see, the universal group is unavailable. This is a new feature that came out in Server 2000. It is not compatible with Windows NT. Windows NT has no way of knowing what a universal group is. So Microsoft does not go back to an older operating system and re-engineer it. Instead, what they do is they try to create these different levels in which you can coexist, and the idea is that try to upgrade to the latest domain controller, or try to upgrade to the latest operating system to take full advantage of what's available in your network. I'm going to cancel this out and then quickly talk about another feature that you may be familiar with. I'm going to go to the properties of the administrator's user account. You can actually go to the properties of any user account. And over here, I'm going to go to the dial-in tab. And again, those of you who who are familiar with Server 2003 or have watched other videos of Train Signal, you may be familiar with this concept of remote access. There is a new thing in Server 2000 and in Server 2003 whereby you can control the remote access of the RAS policy through what is known as the remote access policy. In Windows NT, you could simply say allow or deny, meaning that you are simply allowing somebody to access your servers remotely, or you're denying that person. In Windows 2000 and in Server 2003, there is a new way of allowing or disallowing access, and that is through what is known as remote access policy. This is another key feature, and another key feature right here is verifying caller ID. These are unavailable simply because you are not in the right domain functional level. So if you ever come across these features where you feel that certain things are not available, even though you are confident that these features must and can be used in Server 2000, just check the domain function level. You are not at the right level. It's time to upgrade. So let's do that. I'm going to close this, and now to upgrade our level, we need to go to a different tool. So let me first close this connection over here, and let's go to in admin tools. We will go to Active Directory domains and trusts. So let's do that. I'm going to go to the new tool that we haven't used before, Active Directory domains and trusts. And then over here, what we're going to do is select benandbrady.com, right click on it, and then over here raise the domain functional level. So once again, to raise the domain functional level, you simply right click on it and say raise domain functional level. Before we do that, you should be aware of this, that when you raise the domain functional level, it's a one-way process. Once you raise it to a higher level, you cannot go back to a lower level. So please be aware that it is not possible to go back to a lower level once you've raised it. And they try to tell you or warn you right over here. So at this point, we are in the Windows 2000 mix mode. If I click on the drop-down box, the two different options available to me are Windows 2000 native mode and Windows Server 2003 mode. The mode that is missing out here is, of course, the Windows 2003 interim mode, because that mode is available only if you upgrade a Windows NT 4 server to Windows Server 2003. Please note that for the certification exams. So I can either go one level up, Windows 2000 native, and if I do that, I can support Windows 2000 domain controllers and Windows Server 2003 domain controllers. However, in our network, which is benandbrady.com, all the domain controllers are Server 2003, so I can safely go ahead and upgrade to Server 2003. So I'm going to select that and click on the raise button over here. And again, it says that this change affects the entire domain. After you raise the domain functional level, it cannot be reversed. I already talked about not being able to reverse. Let's talk a little bit about this also, that this change affects the entire domain. Please note that I do not have to do this on each and every domain controller, or I do not have to go to a certain domain controller to do this. I can go to any domain controller and raise the domain functional level to Server 2003 level. So I'm going to click on this and click on OK over here. And there we go. The domain functional level was successfully raised. The new functional level will now replicate to all the domain controllers. It should take several minutes and so forth. Okay. Now let's verify this. I'm going to close this. And what we're going to do is go back to Active Directory users and computers. And in there, we will check the level once again. So I'm going to go to benandbrady.com, right click, and then over here, click on Properties. And there we go. The domain functional level has been changed to Windows Server 2003. Before I leave this, you can also raise it from here too. See there's an Active Directory users and computers. You can also raise it from right over here by right clicking on it and saying raise domain functional level. But the official answer as far as Microsoft is concerned is Active Directory domains and trusts, and that is one of the things that you perform over there. So having said that, let's check out what happened when we raised our functional level. Let's try to create a new global group now. So I'm going to go over here and then select a new group, and there we go. Universal group is available. And let's verify the other thing that that I spoke to you about. I'm going to go to the properties of the administrator and then go to the dial-in tab, and there we go. All the features are suddenly alive and available simply because I'm in the right domain functional level. So I'm going to close this, and that should I think finish this topic. Just one more thing. What I'm going to do now is connect to DC2. So we were on DC1. Let's now connect to DC2, and I'm going to log in to access domain controller 2. Now over here, what I'm trying to prove to you is that even though I perform this activity on domain controller 1, I have actually raised the functional level of the entire domain. So no matter which domain controller you connect to, you should be able to see the same domain levels. So let's see that. I'm going to select benandbrady.com, right click, properties, and there we go. The domain functional level has been raised to Windows Server 2003. So replication took place. A replication normally takes place almost immediately for something as important as this, and our domain is now at the top level. So that brings us to the next topic, which is the forest functional levels. This is similar to the domain functional levels, and in fact it goes hand in hand. All the features of Active Directory that I've talked about so far was the interaction of domain controllers within the domain. So in other words, what I've been referring to is the following. Going back to Active Directory structure diagram over here, In benandbrady.com, I can have several domains. In fact, our domain has 3 domain controllers, DC1, DC2, and DC3. So all the functional roles that we talked about were within the domain benandbrady.com. Well, what about the interaction of the domain controllers of one domain with that of the other in the forest? After all the domains in the forest are related to each other. So the forest functional levels is a similar topic. Instead of talking within the domain, we are talking about domain controllers within the forest. Hence, it is known as the forest functional level. So once again, there are 3 levels, and again, this is there for backward compatibility. The first level is the Windows 2000 level, and this is again on by default, just like the domain in the domain functional level, the Windows 2000 mix was on by default. Now, the reason Windows 2000 Windows 2000 forest functional level is on by default is because it can support all 3 different types of domain controllers, namely servers running Windows NT 4, Windows 2000, and Windows Server 2003. So by default, it is a Windows 2000 level, and it is on by default. The next level is the Windows Server 2003 interim level. Just like before, interim means it can only support domain controllers running Windows NT and Windows Server 2003. And this particular level is available only if you have upgraded a Windows NT domain controller to Windows Server 2003. So the idea over here is to upgrade all the NT domain controllers to Server 2003, and then you can upgrade to a higher level. And the highest level being Windows Server 2003 forest functional level. Again, Windows Server 2003 forest functional level is available and supported only if all the domain controllers are running Windows Server 2003. So once all the servers are running Windows Server 2003, you can go ahead and safely upgrade the forest functional level to Server 2003. Now, why may you want to do that? And the reason for this is that every time Microsoft comes out with a newer version of the operating system, they have significant improvements in their products. So, for example, in the Server 2003 forest functional levels, there is improvement in the way the Active Directory and the global catalogs replicate, and there is also flexibility in renaming of domains. In Windows 2000, if you had to rename a domain, you have to actually uninstall the domain controller from that server. In other words, you have to run dcpromo to actually uninstall the Active Directory and then reinstall Active Directory on that particular server with the correct name. Over here in Windows Server 2003, you have the flexibility of actually changing the domain names. Once again, to raise the functional level, you use a tool known as Active Directory Domains and Trust. In fact, to raise the level for a forest functional level, you must use this tool, Active Directory Domains and Trust. Active Directory uses in computers cannot be used simply because Active Directory used in computers has to do with one particular domain, whereas Active Directory Domains and Forest controls the domains or the interaction of domains in the entire forest. So let's do this now. What we're going to do next is, because once again all our servers are running Server 2003, what we will do is upgrade our forest functional level to Server 2003, and again to do that we need to use the tool known as Active Directory Domains and Trust. So let's do that. I'm going to click on Active Directory Domains and Trust over here, and this time do not select the domain and right click, because this way you're raising the functional level of the domain itself. What you need to do is select the object Active Directory Domains and Trust, the title, right click, and now here we go. You can raise the forest functional level. So let's do that. I'm going to click on this button over here, and let's see what's available to us. Well, we are at the second top level, so the only way you can go higher is to Server 2003 forest functional level, and we're going to do that. Click on the raise button. Once again, it's going to warn us that the entire forest gets affected, and by raising the level, you cannot reverse it anymore. So let's click on OK, and it was raised successfully. In fact, let's see if I can reverse any of this. So what I'm going to do is right click on this and then say raise domain functional level, and there we go. In fact, the dialog box is totally different now. There is nothing to do over here. All I can do is ask for help, which will not provide me any information as to how to upgrade or downgrade lower, or I can close this box. Same thing over here. If I try to raise the forest functional level, I'm unable to do so. Okay, so we are working at the highest level possible. So I'm going to close this and go back to our notes over here, and I think we are done with this topic as well. So there we go. To summarize, there is what is known as a domain functional level, and there are 4 of them. Windows 2000 Mix, that is there by default, Windows 2000 Native for Windows Server 2003 and for Windows 2000 domain controllers only, interim if you have NT40 and Server 2003, and last but not the least, Windows Server 2003 functional level if you have all servers running Windows Server 2003. In contrast, there are three forest functional levels. They are Windows 2000, which is there by default if you're running all three domain controllers, Windows 2003 Interim if you're running NT and Server 2003, and last but not the least, once again, if you're running all Server 2003s, then you can raise to the highest forest functional level, which is Windows Server 2003. So that concludes our discussion of this particular topic. One last thing before I leave this topic is that what permission do you need to actually perform these activities? If you're trying to raise the domain functional level, then you got to be at least a domain admin because you are responsible for that particular domain. However, if you would like to raise the forest functional role, because the forest functional role affects the entire forest, you must be an enterprise admin. So please keep that in mind also. That concludes the first part of this video. In this video, we talked about the domain and forest functional levels. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next video in which we are going to talk about the single master operation roles.